You know that feeling when you're standing ankle deep in ocean water, sun on your shoulders, kids laughing nearby, and for a split second, you wonder what's really moving beneath your feet? We've all had it. That primal flicker of fear Hollywood turned into blockbuster gold. But here's the brutal truth no movie ever shows you. Real shark attacks aren't about suspenseful music or heroic last stands. They're silent, sudden, and sometimes they rewrite entire families in under 60 seconds. Today's story isn't just another true crime footnote or oceanic mystery. It's the attack that still haunts marine biologists and haunts a quiet Australian coastline 40 years later. March 3, 1985, Peak Bay. A mother of four, named Shirley Ann Durdin, wades into water barely deeper than her waist, completely unaware that a 6-meter great white is already locked onto her silhouette. What happened next wasn't just tragic, it was so violently efficient, so complete, that rescuers found nothing but a single flipper floating in blood-red water. No body, no closure, just 4 children frozen on a beach, watching their mother vanish between one breath and the next. And here's what'll keep you up tonight. This wasn't some reckless surfer ignoring warning signs. This was shallow water, clear daylight. A safe bay locals called paradise. So how did one of Earth's oldest predators execute what experts still call the most brutal shark attack ever documented, right in front of a family picnic? Stick around, because before this video ends, you'll understand exactly why sharks don't hunt humans. But when they do mistake us for prey, the ocean doesn't give second chances. But before we dive in, if you're into true stories, creepy tales, and unsolved mysteries, do me a solid, smash that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps the channel more than you know. Alright, said that. Let's get into the video. Peak Bay doesn't look like a graveyard. Honestly, it looks like paradise scribbled straight out of a travel magazine. Picture this. Blinding white sand cupped between rust-colored cliffs, water so clear you can count the shells 10 feet down, and that eerie silence broken only by gulls and distant waves. Locals called it the Gentle Bay, a place where toddlers splashed in knee-deep water while parents grilled sausages on the shore. No riptides, no jagged rocks, just glassy shallows stretching 50 meters out before the seafloor even thought about dropping off. You'd forgive anyone for thinking sharks belonged somewhere else, somewhere wilder, darker, deeper. But here's the ocean's dirty secret. Predators don't read vacation brochures. Peak Bay sits nestled inside the Spencer Gulf, a nutrient-rich highway where seal colonies feast and breed just miles offshore. And where seals gather, great whites follow like wolves to a winter herd. Scientists later confirmed this stretch hosts one of Earth's densest populations of adult great whites, some pushing 20 feet long. Yet between 1974 and 1985, not a single fatality. That illusion of safety became a lethal comfort zone. Families swam daily. Kids dove for shells without flinching. Because when danger feels theoretical, we stop scanning the water. We stop imagining what moves beneath us. And that's exactly when the ocean strikes. Not when we're afraid, but when we've forgotten to be. Shirley waded into water barely deeper than her waist that afternoon, snorkel bobbing gently, completely unaware she'd just crossed an invisible threshold. The bay's calm surface hid a brutal truth. Shallow water offers zero protection against a 6-meter predator, moving at 35 miles per hour. In fact, it makes escape impossible. No deep dive, no frantic backpedal. Just you, the sun on your shoulders, and a shadow rising faster than your brain can process fear. Which brings us to the woman herself, the mother, the dreamer, the soul who walked into that water believing, like all of us do, that tragedy only happens to other people. Shirley Ann Durdin wasn't just a statistic in some cold case file. She was 33 years old, a mother of 4 with sun-bleached hair, a laugh that carried across beaches, and a quiet determination to give her kids the life she'd always imagined. She and Barry had scraped together everything they had to leave Carcou, that dusty inland farm town an hour from the coast, all because Barry's lungs couldn't handle another season breathing in hay and pesticides. They weren't chasing adventure. They were chasing breath. And when they found that little house overlooking Peak Bay, Shirley called it the dream finally breathing back. Tragic irony tastes like salt water. They'd traded one kind of danger for another they never saw coming. Picture that Sunday afternoon, March 3rd, 1985. The kids were barefoot and sunburnt, already buried in sandcastles, while Barry and their friend Keith strapped on snorkels beside Shirley. No panic, no dread, just the easy rhythm of a family ritual. Collect scallops, race back to shore, argue over who caught more. Shirley lingered longer underwater, not reckless, just enchanted. 2 meters deep in crystal water, surrounded by shells glittering like coins, she lost track of time. And in that moment of pure, unguarded joy, she became something else in the eyes of a predator. Not a mother, not a dreamer, just movement, just vibration, just prey. Here's what haunts me. Those last seconds weren't filled with fear. Shirley surfaced smiling, kicking gently toward Barry and Keith, completely unaware that a 6-meter shadow had already locked onto her silhouette. She never saw the dorsal fin slice the surface, never heard the water compress beneath her. One moment she was a wife returning to her husband with scallops in hand. The next she was airborne, shaken like a rag doll 2 meters above the waves while her children watched from the shore. That's the brutal math of nature. Paradise has no warranty. And sometimes the very thing that heals you becomes the thing that erases you. Which brings us to the attack itself, the 90 seconds of pure horror that rewrote everything we thought we knew about shark behavior. Time fractures in moments like these. 1 second, Shirley surfaces with a handful of scallops, sunlight glinting off her snorkel, kicking lazily toward Barry and Keith, who joke about their haul on shore. The next, water erupts. Witnesses later described it not as a splash but a detonation. A 6-meter great white launching vertically, jaws wide enough to swallow a car tire, clamping around Shirley's midsection with 4,000 pounds of bite force. She wasn't pulled under. She was catapulted, hurled 2 meters above the surface while the shark shook her like a terrier with a rag doll. That violent lateral thrashing? It's not rage, it's biomechanics. A technique called saw biting designed to sever blubber, bone, and sinew in one motion. And it worked. What followed rewrote the textbooks on shark behavior. Most attacks last seconds, test bites followed by retreat. Not this. The water bloomed crimson as Shirley's torso floated face down, severed cleanly at the waist. Barry lunged forward, screaming, "She's gone!" But Keith and the children held him back as the shark circled, not fleeing, not curious, methodical. It returned within 30 seconds, jaws clamping around her neck, twisting once before vanishing with her head. This wasn't mistaken identity. This wasn't exploration. Marine biologists still debate whether extreme hunger or abnormal aggression triggered what amounted to consumption, not just killing. In 90 seconds, a mother of 4 ceased to exist as a physical presence. Only one flipper remained, bobbing in blood-flecked water like a cruel punchline. And here's the detail that haunts rescue divers to this day. They found nothing else. Not a shred of clothing, not a bone fragment. Days of sonar sweeps, trained dolphins, and forensic divers yielded 0 remains. The ocean didn't just take Shirley, it erased her. Experts concluded the shark likely returned after dark, finishing what daylight began. Think about that. 4 children standing on sand watching the sea swallow their mother whole, then waiting hours for rescuers who could only offer silence. No body to bury, no grave to visit. Just the echo of a splash that still rings across Peak Bay 40 years later. And the chilling question no scientist can fully answer. Why this woman in this moment became a meal instead of a mistake. Which brings us to the forensic mystery that still divides marine biologists today. Most shark attacks follow a predictable script, a curious bite, a quick release, and retreat. Great whites don't want us, they mistake surfers for seals, take one exploratory chomp, then vanish when they taste bone instead of blubber. But Shirley's case broke every rule in the textbook. This wasn't a test bite. It was consumption, methodical, violent, and complete. Marine biologists still clash over why. Was it extreme hunger overriding instinct? A rogue predator with abnormal aggression? Or something darker? A shark that learned humans can be prey. The data points to hunger. Spencer Gulf seal populations had dipped that winter, and a 6-meter great white burns 3,000 calories daily just to survive. Starvation changes everything, even for apex predators. Here's where the forensic mystery deepens. Witnesses describe the shark's movements as deliberate, not frantic, not confused. After severing Shirley's torso, it circled calmly before returning specifically for her head and neck. That precision suggests something chilling. This wasn't panic feeding. It was targeted dismemberment. Dr. Eric Ritter, a leading shark behaviorist, argues such attacks reveal a predator operating in full predatory mode, scanning for high-fat zones, torso, neck, while ignoring low-yield limbs. Contrast that with typical mistake attacks where sharks bite randomly and flee immediately. Shirley's case sits in a terrifying gray zone. Not quite mistaken identity, not quite hunting, but something in between that science still can't fully categorize. And that uncertainty haunts every family who walks onto a beach trusting the water won't betray them. But here's the truth. No documentary wants to admit. We'll never know why this shark chose Shirley. No autopsy, no tagged predator, just blood in shallow water and 4 children's screams echoing off cliffs. What we do know? This attack rewrote Australia's shark response protocols overnight. Within weeks, authorities deployed drumlines and increased patrols. But they also made a quiet admission. Some predators operate outside statistical models. They're outliers, anomalies, and anomalies don't care about your safety brochures or your low-risk beaches. Shirley's tragedy exposed a brutal paradox. The ocean's deadliest moments aren't the ones we fear. They're the ones we never saw coming because we trusted the water to play by rules it never agreed to follow. Which brings us to the aftermath. The silence that followed the splash, and the family left with nothing but sand between their fingers and questions that would never get answers. Imagine watching your mother vanish into red water, and then waiting hours for rescuers who can only shake their heads. That was reality for Shirley's 4 children on March 3, 1985. Barry had to be physically restrained from diving after her, screaming, "She's gone!" while Keith and the kids clung to his arms. But the real horror began after the shark vanished. Rescue teams arrived within 20 minutes. Trained divers, sonar sweeps, even Navy dolphins. But they found nothing. Not a bone fragment, not a shred of fabric. Just one lonely flipper bobbing in blood-flecked water like a ghost's signature. For 3 days they searched. For 3 days the family waited on that beach, hoping against hope for something to bury. They got silence instead. This wasn't just tragedy. It was erasure. Without a body, there could be no funeral, no headstone, no ritual to mark the transition from wife and mother to memory. Barry and the kids returned to that little house overlooking Peak Bay, the same house they'd called the dream finally breathing back, now hollowed out by absence. Locals whispered about the shark returning after dark to finish its meal. Scientists confirmed it was likely. Great whites cache large kills and return under cover of night. So while the family slept, or tried to, the ocean completed its work. Shirley wasn't just killed, she was unmade. And in a culture that needs graves to grieve, that absence became its own kind of violence. One widow from a nearby town put it brutally. "At least when my husband died in a car crash, I had his wedding ring to hold. What did they have? Sand and screams." The ripple effect tore through South Australia's coastline. Overnight, Peak Bay transformed from paradise to ghost town. Fishermen refused to launch boats. Parents kept kids indoors despite cloudless skies. Petitions flooded town halls demanding shark culls. Echoes of Jaws-era panic resurrected a decade after Spielberg's fiction. But authorities faced an impossible truth. How do you protect people from an anomaly? This attack defied every statistical model. Shallow water, daylight, no splashing. Yet it happened, and it exposed the fragile contract we make with nature every time we wade into the surf. "I trust you won't hurt me." Shirley's story shattered that illusion. And 40 years later, as her case resurfaces on social media with fresh waves of horror, one question lingers like salt in a wound. When the ocean takes everything, even closure, what's left for the living except to stare at the water and wonder if it's still hungry? 40 years later, Peak Bay looks exactly the same. The water still glitters. The cliffs still blush gold at sunset. Tourists still wade into those shallows without flinching. And that's the haunting paradox at the heart of Shirley's story. Tragedy doesn't change the landscape. It only changes the people who survive it. Barry and those 4 children carried a silence no therapy could unpack, a grief without a grave, a memory without a body to anchor it. But their pain carved something vital into Australia's coastline, a warning etched not in signs or statistics, but in the collective flinch we feel when ocean shadows move beneath us. Shirley didn't die because she was reckless. She died because nature operates on a calculus we'll never fully decode, and sometimes paradise has teeth. So here's my question for you. Really sit with this. When was the last time you stood knee-deep in ocean water and actually scanned the horizon? Not out of paranoia, but respect. Because that's the real lesson here. Not fear, but awareness. Sharks aren't villains. They're ancient algorithms honed over 400 million years to read vibration, scent, and silhouette. And when conditions align just wrong, they don't negotiate, they execute. So next time you enter their world, do it with eyes open. Don't let comfort numb your instincts. Because Shirley's story isn't about a monster in the water, it's about the moment we forget we're guests in someone else's home. If this story gripped you, if it made you glance at the water differently, do 2 things right now. First, drop a comment below with 1 word that describes how you felt hearing this. Chilling. Unreal. Grateful. Whatever hit you hardest. I read every single one. Second, hit subscribe and tap that bell, because next week we're diving into the case of Rodney Fox, the man a great white should have killed in 1963, but didn't. His wounds mapped shark jaw mechanics for decades. His survival rewrote medical history, and his story proves something Shirley's couldn't, that sometimes, against all odds, humans do get second chances in the jaws of predators. But you'll only see it if you're subscribed. The ocean doesn't warn us twice. Neither do I.